Good afternoon, and welcome to the third installment of Coach T's How to Be Successful, More Successful in his U.S. History class, 8th grade. This is still an ongoing process, an ongoing project, and I hope that one day it'll be more, maybe more in tune to maybe help students who are absent in class or maybe miss the concept in class, where I could actually record my lecture. But let's go one step at a time. And at the very least, this year, start off a series on how to be more prepared for our CCRC tests. And this has probably been one of the biggest changes in Coach T's class this year. And I know, you're going, wait a minute, what happened to CCRC Test 1? But again, baby steps. We haven't, that one will come later. It may not help you, but maybe it'll help you on final exams. Okay. But CCRC tests are college and career readiness curriculum tests. Maybe a fancy title for the units that we've studied in class. And the reason I changed the name and changed the whole process and philosophy is because tests are becoming more strict. They're becoming more difficult. They've raised the bar on you. So I've made them more in line with what an AP test looks like. Now granted, there may not be 80-something multiple choice questions and many free response essays and DBQs to write, but there is more writing to it, and I've changed that. I used to give, very simple tests, PowerPoint true and false tests. So this is me trying to be better and also trying to help you guys out. So what I want to do is I just want to, again, this may not be a lecture per se, which I'm hoping to one day be able to do, but this will be like Coach T going through all his stuff before he puts together the tests. So if in the process you learn something new or are reminded of something that we've done, and if it spans like 4 or 5 weeks or something like that, it'll be a good tool to just kind of take a look at. Okay. So the first of 3 concepts that are going to be tested on CCRC test number 2, or the 3 concepts that are going to be tested are British colonization of the New World, the pre-phase of the American Revolution, and the war phase of the American Revolution. And again, like I made note in the second installment of this podcast, if there are any fallacies that I pass on or anything that you may have questions about, nothing wrong with sending me a quick email, and we'll figure it out. So the first unit, okay, that I'm going through, that I looked through all these papers and everything like that, dealt with the idea of the 13 original colonies. Okay. What we tried to do in there was we did the mother of all flip chart projects, where we worked on presentation skills and research, and we put together in a group a presentation on one of the 13 colonies, and then we created a gigantic flip chart that is on display outside of my room, and I'll show it to you here in a little bit. But we were presenting on the 13 original colonies, 1 colony per group, and what you had to do was identify location, geography. You had to give me the early history. You had to identify the region it was located in, and then you also had to give me maybe visuals of settlers, and then you also had to create a region essay, which was where were they located and what was going on in the region. So basic characteristics on that. So you probably have in your possession, first of all, notes that I gave you on the region, Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. We did personalize these. So these were basic reminders of Virginia, 1607, the Pilgrims, knowing that the Pilgrims are Plymouth, not Massachusetts, that's Winthrop, okay? Life in the middle colonies, middle breadbasket, southern colonies, agriculture, New England, more manufacturing, environment shaping culture. And then we talked about forms of government, whether it be proprietary company, royal, give me examples of a proprietary colony, owner colony, company, the London Company, 1607, forms of government, more town meetings in the north, more county level type meetings in the south, a hybrid in the mix in the middle colonies. Examples of house, assemblies, legislatures, like the House of Burgesses, 1619 Virginia. Then we talked about things, again, happening in Europe that influenced the colonies. We talked about concepts like, the Glorious Revolution, where William and Mary take over for Mary takes over for her son, father, James. But it's glorious because there's no bloodshed, but important to the colonists because they had been put under restrictions under James, under the dominion of New England, where their charters were taken away from them. Yet in England, they had a new king and queen come over, yet they had to sign the English Bill of Rights, giving power to the people over there. So why can't we get that over here in the colonies? So even the fuse is being lit in the late 1600s, 1680s of power to the people. So some basic, well, you might think boring notes, but again, we marked them up and they were important. I also, on a day that I was absent, okay, for daddy purposes, was a graphic organizer. We talked about government. We just kind of mentioned some government things. What it was like to live in the colonies. We talked about economy, mercantilism, navigation acts. We talked about religious and intellectual movements like the Great Awakening, the Enlightenment, scaring people back into church, Jonathan Edwards, sinners in the hands of an angry God, the Enlightenment process, the movement in Europe. Why does the world work? Let's use reason to figure out how the world works. Oh my God, gravity, inertia, and all that. People that couldn't do science are more going into the philosophy of politics, and they're going, why does, a monarchy work for some people? Why do some people sign contracts to form a government? John Locke. And that spreads to the colonies, like a Benjamin Franklin. So we did that. You should have that in your possession, and you have the notes, okay? So yet again, I'm just kind of sifting through some papers, and I'll go through my binder here in a little bit, okay? CBA review, okay? You also had in your possession these notes right here that you used on the presentation of the colonies with the locations on the back. So that basically summarizes, the 13 original colonies. And you do have this right here. Okay, whoa. Okay. We do have this on display outside. 13 original colonies, a flip chart that you can use to refresh memories. Okay, refresh your memory on certain colonies being created. And, again, look through that paper. Look through, where does an Oglethorpe go? Georgia. Where are the 8 Lords? Carolinas. Which one was a Catholic colony? Okay, Maryland. Okay, so there's a lot of things to review on there. Okay, Berkeley and Carteret, Penn, Pennsylvania. The Duke of York, New York, taken from the Dutch. The Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, separation of church and state, because Thomas Hooker was upset of the strict religious and political ties in Massachusetts. Roger Williams leaving for the same reason. Rhode Island, New Hampshire, the Masons. Okay, so a lot of things to review on there. Okay? So this would have been probably what the notes would have looked like right here, filled out. Okay, typed out for me, and they're on the website. Good tool. Okay. What else would Coach T be looking at? Okay, directions. We took a quiz on the 13 original colonies. Okay, they had basic multiple choice and a bonus right here. I don't want to show off too much because people can be looking later. And then it had a map on the back. So maybe I'll ask you which colonies are located in the middle. Okay. What else do we have here? Okay. And obviously, this is not a substitute for just being in class. Obviously being in class is better. We had some warm-ups about triangular trade, mercantilism. We talked about enlightenment and great awakening, examples of sinners, hands in anger, God. Okay. Then we had to take a CBA, and that interrupted us a little bit. Okay. Then, once we came back after CBA, we started hitting the pre-phase of the American Revolution. And the big project that we did on that was the timeline. And I'll take you back outside for a timeline. But what we did in the pre-phase was we figured out all the events that started accumulating that led to the American Revolution. And this is that, no taxation without representation time period. Okay? And I had some on display, unless you've been one of the ones that, did not collect your timeline or did not take it with you. Here are some on display. Okay? Again, okay, visualization of the pre-phase, okay, and certain events that we looked at were, we looked at French and Indian War, Proclamation of 1763, the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, okay, Declaratory Act, Townsend Act, Okay? And then we go from Townsend. We have Massacre. We have Tea Party, Intolerable Acts. So very similar to the timeline that I have up here. But again, this should be something in your possession, okay? Or at the very least, information that has been added to your pool of background knowledge. But if you feel like you have nothing to study on that and you don't have your timeline, I did give you a copy of this. 3 phases of the American Revolution. I would be studying this pre-phase. This is what's going to be tested. This is the war phase that you just did. I mean, look at some of the things that are on there. The various acts that we just went over. No taxation without representation. Boycotts, the main weapon. The committees of correspondence. Boston Massacre. These are things very important. Some of y'all didn't remember this today. Social contract. John Locke. Okay, so a lot of papers. A lot of notes there that you could be looking at. Okay. What else do I have here? Okay. Then the next activity that we did for the war, actually realizing where certain battles are located, I gave you this packet right over here that had great information on the major battles of the Revolution, and you had to put it together on a map where we had different components. Here's the upper half. Okay, here is the lower half, and we put together major battles of the American Revolution. And I'm gonna go through all this, okay? But we used this packet to put the map together, and I felt it was fun as far as the fact you felt like in charge, you were putting together battles, you felt like you were Washington. But again, from the 3 phases of notes. Be familiar with battles, okay? Lexington and Concord, Bunker Hill, the whites of their eyes. We talked about the invasion of Canada, and we opted certain pictures, or we looked at certain visuals, like the death of General Wolfe at Quebec, the death of Montgomery at Quebec, and introduced to other characters or other generals. Ethan Allen, okay? Benedict Arnold, the traitor. We talked about British withdrawing from Boston with Howe, the cocky general, okay, and his failures after victory at Brandywine Creek and not going up to Saratoga where he was supposed to help General Burgoyne. We talked about toilet paper, Trenton and Princeton, the military genius of George Washington, the using of the crisis, the capture of the Hessians, the crossing of the Delaware, Saratoga, the turning point of the American Revolution, French coming in, Spanish helping coming in, Prussians helping coming in. We talked about Valley Forge. We talked about the victory of the West with Vincennes and George Rogers Clark. We talked about John Paul Jones, I have not yet begun to fight, with his Bonham Richard versus the Serapis. We talked about the end of the war, Cornwallis at Yorktown. And then I also kind of made a note about Francis Marion versus Tarleton, kind of a rough basis of the Patriot, okay? And we put all these on a map, okay? So good notes to be going over for CCRC test number 2. And again, I don't want to show you too many of my copies because, you should have these in your possession, okay? But again, if that's not something you have, the middle phase, right here, the middle of the notes to be studying, okay? We took a pre-phase quiz, okay? Where we talked about Uzis and Albany Plan of Union. We even opticed a Albany Plan of Union political cartoon, okay? What else? I did give you a handout on soaps and optic, and if you had not heard of that, check out the previous video, okay? Okay. Then what we're currently doing is we are looking at the Declaration of Independence, certain excerpts that we have been marking up. This would be good to know, so make sure you get that back from Coach T. I also gave you a review, okay, a very long review on the day that I was absent on Friday because I had to go and talk about this, the CBA test number 2. I gave you a very extensive review, and that would have looked like this, okay? 2 papers. Yeah, I know it looks small, but we marked certain good answers on this paper. There was one big front and back, and then these right here. This is the pre and the war phase. Make sure you have that you're going over that, okay? And then also we did a thing on common sense in class, on Thursday. Today is Wednesday, so we're doing it tomorrow. Certain excerpts from Common Sense. And then on Friday, we looked at certain paintings. Okay, again, visuals. So to cap off, I mean, there's probably things that I may have even, not thrown at you. Okay, and again, this is what you will receive tomorrow on Thomas Paine. So a lot of things that I've thrown at you. Okay, but if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at 13 original colonies, the foundations, who founded them, some of the early life characteristics. Okay, know something about each colony. That's fair game. The prephase, know every major event of it, and not just the order of it, but the impact of it. And then some major battles of the war and some of the documents that came out of them. Some battles, some characters. We did highlight and define 23 terms in the Revolutionary War. Everything from First to Second Continental Congress to battles to Treaty of Paris. Certain people like Washington, Jefferson, the Marquis de Lafayette, Lord Cornwallis. Basic kind of background stuff, knowledge kind of stuff. And then also be ready for to pick an essay on the test and to at least write a thesis and a body argument, one body argument. I guess that will have to be a video that I put on later, but how to write a free response essay. Remember, the format. Although my mother is fat, I love her because she cooks for me, cleans for me, loves me unconditionally. Okay, I know it's very rudimentary thesis, but it's a good step-by-step thesis. Okay, start off with a concession. Okay, although concession. Okay, concession, conceding a point, and then although my mother is fat, I love her. Take a stand because 3 points of argument, and that would follow the TSSC format. Thesis, 3 bodies of support, a conclusion. And then once we start putting documents in there, that'll be a DBQ. So anyway, a wealth of things to be studying. You may have gotten one thing here and there, whether it be things I pointed out in certain parts, emphasize certain parts more than others. But, at the very least, you've got an idea of what I'll be picking questions from. Okay? All righty. Thank you.